In this video, I'm going to walk you through the basic usage of the Substance plugin here in 3ds Max. In this video, I'm using 3ds Max 2021, and in this version, the Substance plugin comes bundled with the 3ds Max installer. However, if you're using an older version of 3ds Max, you can install the plugin from our website. You can also download updated versions from our website at any time. Here, I am at substance3d.com. If you come over to products, you can see here we have ecosystem and plugins. So I'm going to click here and scroll down, and you'll notice here we have modeling and animation, and here you can find the 3ds Max plugin. Click here to learn more, and scroll down once more. Here's where you can find 2018, 2019, and 2020 versions of the plugin. So here we are back in 3ds Max, and I'm going to walk through the process of adding some Substance materials here to this scene. So once you've installed the Substance plugin, you'll notice here at the top of the UI we have this Substance menu. If we click this here, you can see that we have several options. Substance settings, let's take a look at this first. So here under Substance settings is where you have the option to choose your selected engine. The Substance engine comes in either a GPU or CPU variant. The GPU engine is going to process the Substance textures much faster, as well as allow you to work at higher resolutions more easily. Here you also have your default import resolutions for X and Y. You can change this. And here you also have some settings for your memory budget and CPU core limit. Next up here in the menu, we have our Substance batch import. We're going to cover that in just a moment. And below that, we have our render workflows. We are also going to cover these as well by specifically looking at the substance-to-Arnold. These render presets will automatically create a material for the given render and hook all the Substance textures into the material inputs. It will also do any conversions that are necessary. So to get started, I'm going to come over to the Slate Material Editor, and here I'm going to do a search for Substance. So if I start typing in Substance, you'll see that we have two options. We have Substance 2, and then there is Substance. Substance is a very old plugin that's just here for legacy support. So you want to use the Substance 2 node. So if I just left click and drag and drop that here into the Slate editor, I'll double click to take a look at the properties, and here's where I can load in a Substance material, which is going to be an SBS-AR file. Now, something else we can do if you need to batch import several materials, I'm just going to delete this node. We can come back to the Substance menu here and choose to Substance batch import. Here, I'm going to choose all of these materials that I want to be working with. These are again SBS-AR files, and I'm going to click open, and I'm going to allow Substance plugin to just batch import all of these Substance files for me. So here you can see all of the Substance materials have been imported here into 3ds Max. I'm going to select one of these and then focus on this. So I'm going to double click to open the properties here, and we can take a look and see that the Substance package browser has indeed automatically applied this SBS-AR file. Now here's where we can start to change and set up our material. So for example, you can access the selected graph using this dropdown if the Substance contains more than one graph. You can also choose the output preview, which in our case here, the little thumbnail is showing base color. But maybe if I want to switch this to say something like the normal, I can do so, and you can see that the preview icon will change. I'm going to switch this back here to base color. Now here below that, we have the Substance presets. We'll talk a bit more about this here later in the video. Now we have some default settings such as our Substance output settings. This here is where I'm going to set my resolution. Notice that the width and height is 512. This matches that Substance import settings default import X and Y resolution that I had set previously. So I'm going to cancel this here. Now for this particular Substance, I'm going to switch this here to a higher resolution. So I can simply just click the drop down here and choose something like say 2048. Because I have lock ratio enabled, the width and height are then computed both at the same time. Here I have an option for bake outputs, which allows me to bake these textures to disk. Now, if we close up our output settings, you can start to see the actual Substance parameters that we can change to create variation for the particular textures that are being generated. Now, before we do this, let's actually create the outputs, and let's assign this to a material. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close out this material map browser. Let's just make a little bit more room here. And what I want to do, like I said, I'm using Arnold for my renderer in this particular video. So what I want to do is I want to create, well, an Arnold material, and I want to hook in all of my textures. However, like I said, using the Substance menu's render workflows, we can do this automatically. So with this node selected, I'm going to use one of the render workflows. Here, what I'm going to do is just choose Substance to Arnold. So I'll just choose this option, and you can see that these outputs have been generated. Let's zoom out and take a look at what's actually been created. Here you can see that if I double click, we have an Arnold material that's been generated for me, and the Substance material texture outputs have been created, and they have been connected to the appropriate channels here on the Arnold material. So now that that's in place, what I can do is just simply apply this material to my scene. I'm going to do that here. Now you can see that my render preview is updating and we have applied the material. Now one thing that I want to bring to your attention specifically when working with Arnold. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over to my render settings and I'm going to make sure that I have a specific setting set within the System tab of the Arnold renderer. You need to make sure that this Legacy 3ds Max map support is enabled in order for the Substance textures to properly work with the Arnold renderer. If you do not have this checked, you would receive an error about the outputs not being able to be rendered, and it would tell you that you need to enable this Legacy 3ds Max map support. So now let's repeat that process once more. This time I have this concrete stripes substance. So I have the node selected. I'm going to be using Arnold, so I'm going to come over to my Substance menu and choose the Substance to Arnold. And you can see once again the Substance textures have been generated. And here, if we just zoom out and we're going to move over here, you can see I have my Arnold material and the Substance textures are now input into the appropriate channel. Now I'm going to apply this here to my scene. And here you can see that the material is being rendered on the surface. So now let's come back over here to the Substance itself and let's take a look at some of these parameters that we're going to start to play around with. So as I said here, by default, this Substance output setting is 512 by 512. This value is coming from here my Substance settings where I set up my default import resolution for my X and Y or width and height, and it's set to 512. But I can change this at any time. So for example here, I might go ahead and set this to maybe a value of 1024 by 1024, since this particular material is being tiled. But if you need to adjust the tiling on the coordinate node here in Max, you can do that as well. So if I scroll down here towards the very bottom, we have our coordinates. Here's where you can set your U and V, offset, and tiling just as you would inside of 3ds Max. All right, so let's come back up here and let's take a look at some of these Substance parameters. So one of the core benefits of using a Substance in your project is that you have this modular material that can be changed and varied by just simply changing some parameters. And you can see here that this concrete stripe blocks has quite a few parameters that I can change to vary this texture. Now, if we scroll up just a little bit more here, let me close up my output settings and let's take a look at these presets. So this preset is a manager that allows you to, well, manage the presets. You can create, you can import and save presets all here within this window. Substance materials have the capability to embed presets within them. So the author for this particular Substance material had authored some presets that you can choose here. So for example, if I want to look at a preset, let's just try this sand concrete. I can just double click on this preset. And what that's going to do is it's going to vary the parameters here that are part of the Substance material and give me a completely different varied result in my scene. And so as our render refines, you can see that, well, here we're getting a different material altogether. Now, of course, you can go in and change any of these parameters yourself. So for example, I have this vertical stripes amount. That's these little vertical stripes here on the wall. And let's say that I want to increase the value from 4. Let's go take this up to 12. So I make a change here, and you can see that now I have increased that vertical stripe amount. The Substance engine is recomputing these changes across all of my texture outputs, being in this case, which is base color, normal, rough, and metallic, and it's sending those back over into the Arnold material. And you can see with just a quick change of a slider, I get an updated material. Now here, let's come over to this concrete color, and maybe it's a little dark in this particular case, so I'm just gonna lighten it just a bit and then click OK here. So again, I'm going in and I'm changing the parameters. Also, I noticed here that that particular preset had the width and height set to 256, and well, I'm tiling, and at this angle looks pretty good, but might as well just crank this up to, let's say, 2048 by 2048. So you can see here that I'm also dynamically able to change my resolution, again, just by changing some parameter values here in the plugin. So again, if we come up here to the Substance presets, let's say that I like these changes that I made. I can create my own preset here. So if I click this Create Preset button, Let's just call this sand02 in this particular case, and I'll click OK. And so you can see now that this sand02 preset has been created. I can also export this selected preset. So for example, if you want to be able to share this to members on your team, you can do that. These parameters can be read by other Substance plugins, as well as read back into Substance Designer. So like I said, you can use this Substance preset just to manage the presets of your materials. So here, I've used the batch import to add several Substance materials to my scene. I used a render workflow to generate the materials, and now I'm simply applying the materials to objects in my scene. So here you can see that I've launched a render preview. I have all of the Substance materials applied to the objects here in my scene. And that is going to conclude this overview of how to use the Substance plugin here in 3ds Max. To recap, once you've imported the Substance here in the Slate Material Editor, you can come over to the Substance menu and choose which render preset you want to work with. Once you have that set, you select the Substance node. Here's where you can start to make changes to vary the Substance texture outputs. For example, you can work with any embedded presets or create your own. Here's where you can change your Substance output settings to increase or decrease the resolution. And like I said, change any of the Substance parameters. Also here towards the bottom, every Substance node will also have a coordinates node so that you can work with things like UV offset and tiling. And from there, it's just a matter of simply applying the material to the object in your scene. And remember, you can get updates to the 3ds Max plugin on the substance3d.com website.